Reflections from Torch Trust, focusing on Christian faith and sight loss.
Hello, and a warm welcome to Reflections, the show from Torch Trust that focuses on faith and disability in today's world. I'm your host, Marilyn Baker, and I'll be with you for the next half an hour. Today is Mother's Day, so we're going to be taking a special look at some of the mothers in the Bible, as well as celebrating mums. Now, not everyone is a mother or has a good relationship with their own mother. But motherly love can take many forms. Perhaps you've played a motherly role in someone's life, or someone has done that for you. For me, I've been privileged to care for quite a few vulnerable people who have been struggling. And one day when I was in church, a lady said to me, Marilyn, you may not be a biological mother, but you are a mother to many. Well, I found that really wonderful that God could use me in that way. Let's listen now to a piece from a book, Mothers of the Bible by Anne Spangler. This extract is called The Mothers of Moses.
Over time, the Egyptians had tightened their grip, finally enslaving the Israelites, until Pharaoh's paranoia produced an even greater evil, a command to murder each Hebrew male child emerging from the womb. But the Hebrew midwives feared God more than the king and refused to follow his orders, excusing themselves by claiming that Hebrew women were stronger than Egyptian women, giving birth before the midwives even arrived. So Pharaoh commanded his soldiers to search out and smother every newborn male in the waters of the Nile. Jochebed could hear the screams of the mothers echoing regularly across the Hebrew camp as their children were torn from them. Her arms tightened around her own child as he slept quietly against her breast. This one, she vowed, would never be fodder for the Egyptian river god. She and her husband, Amram, would pray, they would plan, and they would trust God to help them. For 3 months, as long as she dared, she hid the infant, managing to keep Miriam and 3-year-old Aaron quiet about their new baby brother. Finally, she acted on an idea that had been growing in her mind. Pharaoh had commanded her to consign her son to the Nile River. All right, then, her own hands would put him into the water. Remembering how God had spared the child Isaac on the mountain of sacrifice, she bent down and laid her son in a basket of papyrus, waterproofed with tar and pitch. Then, with a whispered prayer and a last caress, she wiped her eyes, begging God to preserve her baby from the crocodiles that swarmed the river. She could not bear to watch as the child drifted away from her. Instead, young Miriam kept vigil, following at a distance to see what would become of him. Soon Pharaoh's daughter arrived at the riverbank with some of her attendants. Spotting the basket among the reeds, she sent her slave girl to fetch it. As soon as she beheld the brown-eyed baby, she loved him. The river had brought her a child whom she would cherish as her own. She could not save all the innocent children, but she could spare one mother's son. Was she surprised when a young slave girl, Miriam, approached, asking whether she could go after a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby for her? Did she suspect the truth when Jochebed gathered the boy in her arms, this time as his nursemaid? Whatever was in her mind, she named the child Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. For the next 40 years, she educated him, a prince in the courts of Pharaoh himself. God kept Moses safe in the very midst of extraordinary evil and danger. First in crocodile-infested waters, and then right under Pharaoh's nose. And he used the Egyptians to protect and educate him in ways that must have made Moses even more effective in his eventual role as his people's deliverer.
We'll be taking a look at another biblical mother later in the show. But now it's time for our thought for the week. This was written by Alan Vogt, a long-time friend of Torch.
My father was a faithful supporter of the AA. That's the Automobile Association, not to be confused with Alcoholics Anonymous. As children, we were always excited when we were out in the car if an AA patrolman spotted the badge on the front of the car and gave us a salute, something that's no longer practiced. For my 7th birthday, my mother decided to give me an AA uniform. We often used to dress up in old clothes and act out plays, but this was special. Mum arranged for a tailor to measure me for the brown jacket with pockets, the brown trousers and belt, and of course the peaked cap. I was thrilled to wear it and liked to stand outside our house saluting the cars that passed. One afternoon, a friend, another 7-year-old boy, was invited to tea. My mother suggested I should let him have a turn at wearing the AA uniform. "I'm not letting anyone else wear my special uniform," I shouted, furious. I launched into a fit of yelling and tears that lasted 2 hours, while I was kept in my bedroom. Poor Mum. She thought she was acting for the best. She was trying to encourage me to share my possessions. She was hoping that I would learn to be less selfish. She couldn't have imagined the dramatic results of her suggestion. Parenting's a bit of a moral maze. Mothers and fathers need daily wisdom to make the right decisions to bring up children to live the right way. In the Bible, we read of God as a loving heavenly Father. He's not an indulgent parent, but one who gives loving discipline. We can see that in the way he led the people of Israel through the wilderness and into the promised land. They often turned their backs on him despite all he did for them. We also read in the Bible about how Jesus, God's Son, wept over Jerusalem as a parent might weep over a willful child.
Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing.
I wish I could say I'd been happy to share my treasured AA uniform with my friend, and that doing so taught me to be unselfish. Memory tells me otherwise. But my mother was probably doing right to encourage me towards better behaviour. Now that I'm an adult and a parent myself, I recognise all the ways in which God has been a loving Father to me. I want to learn to follow God's instruction as found in the Bible, and live a life that pleases Him.
Let's go back now to the book Mothers of the Bible and learn about another very important mother who we meet in the New Testament. This piece was written about Salome, one of the followers of Jesus.
Her legacy in Scripture. Matthew chapter 20, verses 20 and 21. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and, kneeling down, asked a favour of him. "What is it you want?" he asked. She said, "Grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at your right, and the other at your left, in your kingdom." What did James's and John's mother really want? Do you think she was asking only for honour for her sons, or did she also want something for herself? How do you react when your child is honoured? How do you react when your child is passed over for some honour? How are you like Salome? Matthew chapter 20, verses 22 and 23. "You don't know what you are asking," Jesus said to them. "Can you drink the cup I am going to drink?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father." What cup is Jesus talking about here? Do you think the disciples answered his question glibly or seriously? Would it be wise to prevent all suffering in the lives of your children? Why or why not? Matthew chapter 20, verse 24. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the 2 brothers. Why were the other disciples upset with James and John instead of with James's and John's mother? Do you think James and John had some part in their mother's actions? If you had been there, what would you have said to Salome? Have you ever said something similar to the mother of one of your child's friends? Perhaps not to her face, but at least to yourself. Why are mothers so eager to protect and elevate their own children? Matthew chapter 20, verses 25 to 27. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave." With these words, Jesus totally overturns the natural reactions of his culture and ours. How do you think the disciples and Salome reacted to his words? What do you think Salome may have been thinking at this point? How easy or hard is it for you to play the role of servant? Define servant leadership. What has to change in your life for you to truly become a servant leader?
If you've enjoyed hearing extracts from Mothers of the Bible by Anne Spangler, you may like to read the entire book. It's available for anyone with sight loss to borrow from the Torch Library in Daisy Audio. We'll be giving out the contact details at the end of the show. But now we have just enough time for a lovely poem about mothers read by Grace Dawson.
Mother's Hands by Janet Martin from christart.com. Not because of gold or silver, not because of jewelled bands, not because they're soft and perfect, do I love my mother's hands. But because these hands once held me tenderly close to her breast, and because these hands would point me to the path she knew was best. Mother's hands so gladly laboured, mother's hands so seldom still, never seeking her own favour, giving always her free will. But the thing of greatest beauty, as she tended to each care, was her source of strength for duty. Mother's hands were hands of prayer. Mother's hands would clap to praise me for a good deed I had done. Mother's hands were there to save me when my deeds had hurt someone. And my mother's hands would teach me what is right and what is good. Mother's hands would always reach me when no other hand e'er could. Mother's hands so full of power when her load was hard to bear. Even in life's darkest hour, mother's hands would fold in prayer. Oh, no matter where I travel, or how great the sights or grand, there is none to make me marvel like my mother's praying hands. Praying hands can reach her children when they've gone so far away. Mother knows that God will reach them as she folds her hands to pray. Gracious Father up in heaven, bless each mother everywhere, in each country, tribe or nation. Bless the hands of prayer.
We're all out of time for today, but if you'd like to get hold of any of the books in Torch's accessible library for blind and partially sighted people, then do give us a call on 01858 438 260. That's 01858 438 260, or you can email info@torchtrust.org. Until next week, from me, Marilyn, and everyone on the Reflections team, goodbye and God bless.
You've been listening to Reflections from Torch Trust.